Outside of probably The Mandalorian, Andor is easily the best Star Wars side project. And Andor Season 2 had a ton of hype coming into its final season. And I have to be very honest, it didn't start off too hot for me. We pick up a year after the events of Season 1, where the Empire wants to mine this one planet for a very powerful mineral it has. Meanwhile, Cassian is out on a mission for the rebellion and is trying to get back, but is ultimately sidetracked for a few episodes. His whole deal this season is that he wants to be out of the rebels. He's done. He's tired. He feels that he's done enough. He's tired of running. He's nearly escaped death all the time. And honestly, he's also a little bit tired of Lucian in his ways, who's always trying to convince him to take a more leadership role. And you throw in Biggs in the mix, who's suffering from PTSD from what happened to her in Season 1. We also get fast-tracked to the full-blown relationship between the plain whiteys. And we also see where the senator lies in all this and the strings that are being pulled behind the scenes, all that secretive spy shit. Now, because of the success of Andor Season 1, and because this is the final season, and because we literally know how it's supposed to end leading into Rogue One, there really is a lot riding on this last season. Now, I feel the need to say this every single time I talk about Star Wars because I don't focus on one thing on my channel. I like to watch all kind of things, but I am not a diehard Star Wars guy. I don't throw out the word fan for everything. I respect fandom so much that I don't just label it all the time. I respect Star Wars. I enjoy the video games more than anything. I've seen every Star Wars thing, maybe except the Clone Wars cartoons. I've seen the OG Clone War cartoons, but the Cartoon Network one, the Anakin, the good ones, I think. Right? I don't know. There's a bunch of them. I haven't seen any of those Clone War cartoons, but everything else I've seen, and I have a mixed bag of loving, hated, and enjoying some stuff. But I say this honestly because Star Wars fans are a little vicious. They get kind of, you know what I'm saying? So I just feel the need to put that out, you know, so you guys see exactly where I'm coming from. I have to preface everything by saying, this is how I see it from a normie's point of view. If you would like to label me that, I don't give a shit. So if I mention or say something or pronounce something wrong, feel free to correct me down in the comments. But I just want to provide that perspective. So with that said, the show starts off very, very, very slow in my opinion, because it was simply too much explanation. Now, it does a great job in setting everything up, but it just felt like too much blah, blah, blah. And even when there was pew-pews, it just didn't feel like anything was necessarily being paid off. Now, again, it wasn't useless blah, blah, blah. It was all for world building and establishing characters and feelings and relationships. And there was actually some sections with fun suspense, but ultimately as a collective, if that was where the season would have ended, would have been kind of meh. Even from an editing standpoint, some episodes were just not done right for like good retention. There's this one episode where we're just going back and forth from like a fight to a literal wedding. So there would be a fight and then this lady dancing. Now, again, maybe because I'm not a Star Wars fan, but maybe this is supposed to symbolize the difference between the rebellion, like this side's fighting and dying, and then this other side is just in the mix with the rich people dancing. I don't know. But for me watching, it was just like, I want to stick with the pew-pews. Can I see more of the pew-pews before we cut to little people dancing? I just didn't feel that was strong enough. And because there's like a Game of Thrones amount of people and storylines, when you want to focus on one, it would cut away and they would focus on something else. And I kind of wish, okay, could we just finish? Can we wrap up this story before we go over here, instead of trying to tell me 3 or even 4 stories literally at the same time? Some of the editing in those episodes, it just felt to be too much. Until episodes 7, 8, and 9, where everything that's been planning is set in motion and where they blew their Andor load in our face. And it made the last 6 hours really worth it. Everything that they were exposing and everything that they were explaining, everything that they were building finally came into play in this episode. Man, it was so worth it. You go through a lot in these episodes. It's such a ride. I feel like you're cooking a meal. So for 6 hours, you're cutting, prepping, cleaning, searing, roasting, boiling. And then after this long day of cooking, you sit down and finally take a bite and you're like, it's worth it. That's what episode 8 felt like. Star Wars Thanksgiving. I would put episode 8 up there probably with like season 1's Prison Break episode. But I feel like the repercussions and the actions and everything that happened in that episode was so good that it carried momentum throughout the end of the season, because they had to deal with what happened in episode 8, which bled into episode 9 and makes the decisions made in episode 9 feel way more important, which creates a domino effect all the way to the end of the series. Again, we know that it has to eventually lead into Rogue One. We know these characters, and we know that the fate that these characters are served by the end of that. But Andor just proves how much important the why and the how are, because they made that a big focus of the show, the why and the how we get there. Between a few episodes, they will jump a whole year, kind of showing the repercussions of what happens in between some of the exciting spy shit, or maybe an exciting action, or maybe an exciting battle happened. We would jump forward and we would see where we are a whole year after. And for a big chunk of it, there's actually like 3 sides to the story. You have the Empire, the Rebels, and the people from the planet that they're trying to overtake. So this lends for very fun spy shit for people to blur the lines between the 3. So this is not just a Diego Luna Andor show, even though it is called Andor. There's so many characters that get proper screen time, which in turn lets them develop and gives them time to be fleshed out as characters, literally showing us both sides. And I don't mean of literally just the Empire and the Rebels, but both sides of the characters. There may be 2 characters that are on the same side, but they might disagree. But because the characters are so fleshed out and their views are so clear, when there is a disagreement, there's reason and common sense for each character's decision and why they stand on that position. For example, Cassian and Lucian spend basically the whole show at odds with each other. Again, Cassian is trying to quit, and Lucian is telling him that, no, you should actually step up and be a leader to this thing. But because the show shows their perspective so clearly, you can understand why Cassian wants to quit, and you understand why Lucian sees him as such an important piece to the overall Rebel Alliance. Plus, Skarsgård and Diego Luna's, the way they act and play off of each other is so brilliant. I would really wish there was even more screen time for them, but there's truly just so much going on, and the tone is much more serious than in past Star Wars projects. It's still Star Wars, it's still set in that world, but it never comes off silly or cartoony. Even the creatures or some of the aliens, for some reason you take them to be more serious. It might be the tone or the colors or something about it. They don't seem as flamboyant or as crazy or as over the top that you might see in different projects. I also wonder if Disney Plus is going to continue with this, or if other streaming service might adopt the 3 episode at a time release, which I think is brilliant because it really is the best amount of episodes to put out. It's enough for you to binge, and it's also enough for you to nibble. Plus, it just makes the season release quicker. They literally put out 12 episodes in 4 weeks. They've been dabbling with this in Daredevil. They would like put out 2 and then do 1 and then eventually drop 2 here and there. And Netflix is starting to do parts as well. If you're going to have a short season, 4 to 6, okay, you can do an episode a week. But anything over 9, I think dropping multiple episodes at a time a week is brilliant. Even with those first few episodes just being really slow, they ultimately did help with the character stuff, which I love because, like I mentioned in episode 8, all that stuff eventually does pay off. And a lot of it has to do because of the way characters are written. They're simply better than just past Star Wars projects. They always end up using the thing that I hate the most in movies and series, and is the because I say so form of storytelling. They don't spend time in showing you backstory or giving you a explanation that has a ton of common sense and reasoning that makes these characters feel human and establish relationships and lets you see their points of view, but you spend enough time on the opposite side of point of view to really understand what's going on and why they have the status that they might have within their friend group or within the society or within the group that they have. No, it's simply, why is this person like that? Oh, because I said so. I hate that. It's so frustrating because it's not only lazy, it's insulting to me. I'm supposed to believe you because you're telling me? No, fuck off. Besides, because you don't establish this, you don't even follow the same rules that you yourself are setting yourself up in this show for. Because you yourself don't have a clear vision of this character, they'll do decisions that contradict themselves in past seasons or in past episodes. Because you don't have a clear vision of the character that you yourself created. When I think of strong characters, I don't necessarily mean the buffest. I don't necessarily mean the person that wields the Force the most and ends up using it always to trying to outshine everybody around them. That's not what I think of strong characters. Those characters actually suck, and it doesn't matter what their gender is. If a guy shows up and all of a sudden he's the bestest, the strongest, the fastest, the whatever there is, and he is all those things just because you say so, guess what? That character sucks ass. And because this show doesn't do that, that's why Cassian is such a great character within the Star Wars universe. He's literally just a guy. He even says, I'm just a guy with a shit ton of luck. And I think that my luck is running out. And I don't want that to happen. So you know what? Fuck it, I'm out. I don't want to be part of this rebellion anymore. Which in turn adds so much complexity to the decisions that he's making and why he's making those decisions. And this show is littered with strong female characters. You have the bad guy, Deidre, who, shout outs to her because she has a Contosaurus Rex face. You just want to punch her. Shout outs to the actress because you evoke that emotion from these people. You don't feel that way because the character sucks as a character. You feel that because of the actions that she's doing. And she doesn't physically hurt anyone herself. She doesn't pull out a gun or shoot anybody in the face or torture anybody. It's just that her actions and her lack of empathy in the way that she thinks and sees the world makes her a bad guy. Bix is a strong character because of everything that she's going through and the way that she decides to deal with that stuff. The Mon Mothma lady, she sacrifices and has to make some really tough decisions that require a ton of bravery. And because she does those actions, she's so brave that other strong male characters are like, bitch, no, don't do that. You don't gotta do that. But she has the balls to go out and do those things, which in turn makes her a strong female character. But my favorite was Clea. She was a badass. I think she was my favorite character overall. I really liked the way that she operated, her attitude. And again, none of these characters use the Force, and none of them are littered with crazy skills. They're really just determined and about that life, really. But these characters are not written to shine on purpose, but they're just so fleshed out and such great characters that they shine on their own. So why doesn't Andor suck? Well, because of everything I mentioned. It does a lot of things right, but the best thing it does is that it's focusing on telling an interesting Star Wars story. I mean, it's literally spun off from the movie that's titled A Star Wars Story. It's a captivating story within this world. It has a much more grounded view on things. These are regular people. Andor doesn't need any of the Force to be a great intriguing character. None of them have the Force stuff. You know, there's no Skywalker stuff around. Granted, this series does feature maybe the best Skywalker scene of all time with Darth Vader showing up and murking those fools, but it wasn't necessarily about that. The Force does appear in one episode in this show, but the way it was used was brilliant because more than anything was used as a way to plant a seed and also to provide Cassian's point of view. He doesn't believe in it. He thinks it's some kind of carny trick, but this seed of the Force influences his future actions that actually are super important that take place later on. And I feel like that's how it's supposed to be. Taking the Star Wars stuff to build upon it instead of tearing it down. This show adds to Star Wars in a way that many of the other projects just don't. We don't want to see you on Star Wars. We don't care about your experience in Star Wars. And I'm talking about the creatives behind the shitty Star Wars stuff. I don't know if you didn't know, but I'm here to let you know. We don't care about your story. When I come to see Star Wars stuff, I'm here to see Star Wars. We want what Rogue One literally is. A Star Wars story. So Disney, could you do us a favor and give us just different forms of that? I don't know where you guys are on, but I really enjoyed the Skeleton Crew Star Wars series. For that reason, because it's a Star Wars story. It's basically Goonies and Star Wars. How about making fun stories that anyone can gravitate towards that is just simply set in the Star Wars galaxy? I don't get why that should be so hard. Again, Andor proves that it's more about the why and how than the end result. But those just were my thoughts on Andor Season 2? Let me know yours down in the comments. Did you enjoy how it ended? Were you satisfied? Would you might have liked another season or two? What did you think along with your other Star Wars thoughts? Let them fly down in the comments. And while you're down there, if you can hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you guys for watching. Remember to always and forever, you do you.